Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. The newest featured 5-star character, Yinlin, has prematurely arrived. Today, we'll take a look at how great a Sequence 0 Yinlin is. Initially when I got Yinlin, I have to be honest, she felt very clunky. But after experimenting with her and learning the nuances to her kit, I can now confidently say that I think she's an incredible character. It just takes some time to get used to. I'll be sharing with you how to overcome her biggest weaknesses, and then I'll showcase what I was able to do in a couple of hours with her and at my level of investment into her. Now Yinlin's normal attacks are very slow and quite sluggish. As we can see, her 4-hit normal attack string feels very unwieldy and puts her in a vulnerable position. Also, in order for her to actually do some real damage, she absolutely is reliant on her Forte gauge, which will take a lot of effort at the beginning of a fight to fill up, especially if you rely on her normal attacks. Once her Forte is full, she can do a heavy attack to mark all enemies tagged with the Sinner's Mark nearby her, with the Punishment Mark instead. And as a PSA, please make sure the enemy is tagged with a Sinner's Mark first before using her Forte, which most of the things that hit the enemy from her do mark them with a Sinner's Mark, but if you swap her off and swap her back on, the Sinner's Mark is gone, so just make sure to reapply it. Anyway, once her Forte is full, she can do a heavy attack to mark all enemies tagged with the Sinner's Mark nearby her with the Punishment Mark instead. The Punishment Mark is what makes her such a great sub DPS, where anytime an enemy is hit while they have the Punishment Mark, they take a bit of electro damage. This adds up significantly and can tick around 18 times during the duration, and thus her Forte ends up doing around 1300% multiplier even at just talent level 6. So yeah, when I started using her, when I wanted to build her Forte, I found myself trying to spam basic attacks, as this is generally a reliable way to build Forte for most characters, but to no avail, it took forever to build her Fortes. Fortunately, there are many other ways to generate Forte which are not immediately obvious. Her skill also is very unwieldy, especially if you stay on field for the whole thing. It's a 2-part skill, and when you use it, within the next 10 seconds, if you use it again, it will perform the second part. However, if you swap off and swap back on, after only using the first part, she'll lose the second part of her skill, which is a bit unfortunate. And the second part of her skill is very slow, but this is by design. The first thing I noticed is that from 0 Forte, I found it to be most effective to use her skill, and then to use the second part of her skill immediately and swap cancel it to do something more productive on your other teammates. Another thing that I noticed is that when you start from 0 Forte, her heavy attacks actually provide a lot of additional Forte in comparison to her basic attacks. As we can see, her heavy attacks filled up her Forte way faster than her basic attacks did. So starting from scratch, I actually prefer to use her charged attack to build Forte efficiently at the beginning of a fight, so that way you can tag the enemies with her Forte sooner than later. Now the next thing I noticed is that Yinlin has a lot of swap cancel potential. In particular, you should almost always try to cancel the following: her basic 3, her basic 4, her E2, which is the second part of her skill, and her Forte all have long animations which make her very vulnerable, but all of these also have large payoffs, so this allows her to be constantly swap cancelled at these points in her combo string. And if you remember to always swap cancel when you do a basic 3 or basic 4 or an E2 or a Forte, you will notice significant gains to your Yinlin. Now another quirk of hers is that when she's swapped on, not via an intro skill, she actually starts at the basic 2 part of her combo string. This actually allows you to very quickly go for a basic 3 and thus swap cancel off of it. In fact, basic 3 is also swap backable, allowing you to swap back in time to continue her combo string to execute basic 4. But this is a bit advanced for most people, but just remember that you can swap her on without an intro skill, do basic 2 into basic 3 and then swap off if you want to. You could also just do basic 2, basic 3 and basic 4 and swap off at basic 4. Now knowing this, now we can figure out a few good ways to maximize Forte gain for her in order for her to smite all her enemies with lightning. Let's take a look at a few examples. The first example is at the start of a fight. The first thing we do here is to use her skill, then skill 2, and swap cancel the second part of her skill 2, which is very slow. Then we swap her back on, which leads to a basic 2 hitting, and follow this up with a heavy attack. We do another heavy attack after this, and then very quickly within the third heavy attack, she's already doing her Forte. This fills up her Forte very fast at the beginning of a fight and marks enemies with a judgment mark sooner than later. This is in my opinion one of the faster and more efficient ways at the beginning of a tower chamber to fill up her Forte. And as the fight goes on, we start to have access to outro and intro skills. By using Yinlin's intro skill, we need to now do the following to fill up her Forte. We can do an E, then E2 swap cancel, and then a swap back on to immediately start the B2, B3, and B4 and swap cancel the B4. This string actually conveniently fills up her Forte mid-fight once you have your intro skills available. An alternative combo to the above is to replace the B4 with another B2 plus B3 via another swap cancel. But the point of all this is to introduce you to when you should swap cancel and why it's valuable with Yinlin. And if you find yourself staying on the field doing her attack combo strings over and over, just trust me, it's not going to work out well and she's going to feel like a really bad character. But with these swap cancels, Yinlin actually feels like a very smooth character. Since we now know exactly when to swap off, it is a much smoother and optimized gameplay experience. Now after figuring all this stuff out, I took her for some runs throughout Tower and Hologram, and I used her with Havoc Rover, who is my next best built character. While they don't have particularly great synergy with each other, they work well enough together since neither of them need too much field time. As we can see, the AoE that they're able to do made Tower 3-3 a complete walk through the park, as they alternate taking turns obliterating the enemies. This team managed to clear this in around 30 seconds, which is very respectable given that this is a level 70 team with a sequence 0 Yinlin with very copium echoes. Speaking of my build, well, here it is. Yinlin is using her signature rectifier, the String Master, and my Havoc Rover has much better echoes, and she's also using the Strongbox 5-star sword, the Emerald of Genesis. I also took this team into 3-4, where after multiple tries and learning as I played with Yinlin, I was literally discovering these texts and openings while I was doing this, I was able to 2 Dorito this chamber with the current builds. With much better echoes on Yinlin or perhaps a built Colcharo, even at level 70, I do think this team can 3 Dorito this chamber. Admittingly, this isn't the most incredible team choice here, because my Havoc Rover is barely doing any damage to this thing since it massively resists Havoc damage. But even despite this handicap, I think it's a quite reasonable performance all things considered. The nice thing about Yinlin is that she's quite a surprisingly flexible character, and you can actually run many different teammates to do their thing with her. Not only does she not need too much field time and she's very swap cancelable, her outro actually provides some liberation damage as well as lightning damage, so that way most characters that actually do any damage with their liberation still can make partial use of her outro skill, even if it's not fully optimal because they're not an electro character and thus don't gain the full effects of this. Many characters can still utilize the liberation buff. Like for example, my Havoc Rover often got Yinlin's outro buff to buff her mega liberation nuke. As for holograms, well, Yinlin is very good for those as well. However, because she needs to be constantly swap cancelled for the most rewarding parts of her kit, having another reliable, fast character to swap to, like Havoc Rover or honestly most melee characters who don't pop themselves into the air and thus get themselves killed like Verina, is very good for your team's survivability. Obviously, the Morning Axe is the first victim to fall, being one of the easier holograms. However, because my most built character outside of these two characters is Jian, I've actually been avoiding the monkey. But with Yinlin, after a few tries, her and Havoc Rover were easily able to clean out hologram 6 in 3 minutes and 56 seconds. I believe this is overall the thickest hologram, although maybe Tempest Memphis might be close, but I'm not entirely sure. but considering this team is at level 70, this is a pretty decent performance. Sadly, my Calcaro is not ready for prime time, and well, sadly there will be some issues when using Yinlin plus Calcaro due to quick swaps in general being nerfed, but still I do think that the two of them will still be very solid teammates for each other. Overall, I would say Calcaro can probably still get 2 death messengers on average with the full outro bust from Yinlin, but of course that's going to take, people actually using them together, and it's very fight dependent. And another great point is that Yinlin doesn't actually need Calcaro and can absolutely be used with other characters. The most important thing about her though is that you absolutely should swap cancel her slow moves, which I have been harping on over and over throughout this video. As a reminder, you should swap cancel the second part of her skill, her basic 3, her basic 4, and her Forte. And if you learn to swap cancel these consistently, and if you learn when you can get away with outputting these high payoff moves, then your Yinlin will immediately feel 10 times better to use and will be a much better character. Now, I forgot to mention another super important reason why you want to swap cancel these, and it's because when you swap cancel to another character, that new character that swaps onto the field can then immediately dodge, and thus you will actually be able to survive and Yinlin won't just get pummeled to death. So yeah, if you unfortunately are not comfortable with swap canceling, then Yinlin probably isn't the best character for you. For example, a character like Jian doesn't really need to swap cancel very much, especially during his liberation. And Yinlin, on the other hand, absolutely wants to swap cancel a lot during a fight. Anyway, I hope this video helps demonstrate her viability and potential in this game. I'm personally having an absolute blast with her, but it definitely took some time to figure out and to get used to. Let me know what you think about Yinlin down in the comments below. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.
幕開けよ。どこ